What's up, Ionics, and welcome back to a new quick win. Today I want to talk about modals in Ionic version 6 because they changed a bit. Modals, especially the Ion modal and the Popover, are now shadow DOM components, which means you can't target them with the standard CSS that you might have used before, that you have seen me using in videos before. You can only target them with defined CSS variables, so all the things that Ionic defined inside those components, or with some shadow parts of these components. And that's exactly what we're gonna do in this video. If you want to check out the source code, link below the video, available for all Ionic Academy members. And if you're not yet a member, go check it out, ionicacademy.com, my place to help you with everything Ionic. So let's dive into the fun of Ionic 6 styling, modals, and a popover. Alright, for today's video you only need one thing, and that is a blank new Ionic application. And within that application you can generate a new modal and a new popover to test our functionality. On top of that, I don't know, I usually record my videos up front, so when I recorded this, Ionic 6 was still in beta. Probably it still is. If that's the case, you have to install Ionic Angular next to get Ionic 6. Otherwise, if you start new applications, you already might have Ionic Angular version 6. So check out your package.json, which version of Angular you are using, or version of Ionic Angular. Then we got this little application. I created a few things. Within the home page, I just added 3 buttons, nothing special, nothing too interesting in here. And I connected them in the home page with the according functions. To open a modal, so using the modal controller create, passing in my modal page, in the second one as well. The first one gets the CSS class small modal, and the other one gets transparent modal. So just different CSS classes to show a few things. And for the popover, we also pass in the event, because then you will get this little popover arrow at the right position. Also coming with a custom popover class. That's for the setup. I just wanted to do this up front so we can focus on the CSS. Now, what happens when I create them? We see a little page already. Let's check out the modal page. Within that page, I just added a dismiss function. Well, that's not really interesting. And as well, a little list. I took this from the Netflix example because I really wanted to make this transparent background. That was really a cool tutorial. So I used rows. I just iterated through 15 numbers, just printing out a little number, and at the footer I got a button to dismiss that view. So for that view we might need a bit of additional CSS. But for now, let's start with creating our CSS. No, let's actually do this so we can focus really on the modal stuff. So for this page, I took the CSS once again from the Netflix tutorial to give the first row a bit of margin, give the column a bit of padding, and the toolbar a bit different styling. This is completely the same with Ionic 6, so we will just have a little bit different list. We see this a bit bigger icon down here, and still both pages have completely the same UI. For the popover, we have this great, I actually don't know what's going on right here, this great list of items that I just created the same way with this fake iteration here and then the item. I think what I encounter a little problem with scrolling in this view, and it looks like you can set scroll wide to false, as otherwise there might sometimes be a little bug with the content not being able to scroll. Right now we anyway have the right height, so once we change the height we're gonna see this. Perhaps I will remove this for now, so we got a little thing to fix in the end and see the difference. Alright, let's start with the first one, the modal, and we want to just make this, well, a bit smaller. And usually we just head over to our global SCSS and use, well, let's use transparent modal. I think that's the one we applied to that first page, wasn't it? Okay, we got small modal and transparent modal, that's fine. Okay, for transparent modal, let's start by changing the background overall. So let's try this. And we're gonna give it a bit of opacity by using the last 2 digits. That should already change the background, but we don't really see that. We see it just short in the background. Also, we're gonna set the Ion content background to, let's say, transparent. So this is now targeting the actual content of that page. We could also make this setting in our modal page, and the result looks like this. Well, nothing changes. That's, well, I actually thought it would change. Do we do anything wrong in here? Well, let's try one more thing. And that is, we want to target the part. Now, how do I know about the parts? First thing is, I looked at the breaking changes and I looked at modal, and we see converted to use shadow DOM by now. That means the traditional rules, you usually had something like modal wrapper in here, I think. And then you could target that inner modal. That doesn't work anymore with shadow DOM, so we have to either inject the CSS variables like we did with the background, or we can use the shadow parts, and they specified backdrop and content for the modal. So let's give this a try. Usually you would write it like this: Ion modal part content, and then you could write the CSS for that specific part. Let's just give it a try. Backdrop, filter, blur, 12 pixels. I fear that there's still, I think I just clicked on the wrong. I just have to click that one. Let's quickly comment this out for a second, because our CSS was already working only for this one. So we see we are able to make the Ion content transparent without using any shadow parts. That wasn't really hard. You can also take a closer look. Thanks, that was perfect. Really not what I meant. Okay, we got the Ion modal up here with the CSS class transparent modal. Then we see shadow root open. So we're inside a shadow DOM here. And then we should see somewhere a part. Where's the part? Ion row, Ion content, Ion. Where's my part actually? Is there? Okay, now we see it. Okay, there it is. The backdrop, part backdrop, and it's taking, actually not taking my color. Is it my color? I don't think so. Yeah, we used it here, transparent modal. That's the backdrop of the content. But anyway, we see the part backdrop and we can see the part content. So those are the parts where we can inject styling. And if I now comment this in, we're able to give the content part this cool blurred effect. You can also change this if you want to have it more structured. I actually wanted to keep it under transparent modal. So we can just put it in here and use the and sign, because if we now hover about it, we will see that this basically does the same, transparent modal and targeting a part. And you see the result is completely the same. Now let's try to also target the other properties of our modal. I think the second one was called small modal. Let me just quickly check this so I don't run into the same problem. Yeah, it's small. Okay, for small, let's try and also target the backdrop property. So we go ahead, backdrop. And for the backdrop, let's say we want to have a really ugly background color of, I really don't know. Let's use something like red and check it out. And then we see that we can open it and we got this little red in the background. To actually see it, we should maybe change the part of content because we want to make this a bit smaller. We will give it just a width of 80, perhaps a height of 50%, making it centered with margin auto, and then perhaps also changing the border radius to 10. Now this will target a different part of the component, and as we can see, it becomes a lot smaller with rounded borders like this, and we got this super ugly red background. We could also create that red background by using something else, as far as I know. Perhaps it's background opacity. Let's see if we can figure this one out. So how could we style the backdrop as well? With the Ion backdrop color. Let's give this a try and set that one to red. And hopefully we should get to the same results. Yeah, there we go. So you now see that there are actually two ways to perform different things for Ionic 6 modals. You could either use the defined CSS variables to inject styling like we did with -- Ion backdrop color, or you could also directly target a part of a component. But in that case, you really have to make sure that the part exists. It's usually specified on the component. I didn't found it for the new components, but perhaps it will be in the new updated documentation. So then you should always have a list of parts that you can target, like backdrop or content. In this case, we've used both of them to achieve this really hilarious, ugly look. But anyway, that wasn't the point of it. Point was about how you can style this, and I think for Ion Modal, that should be enough to basically perform everything that you want. Now, let's continue with the popover. So we go with a custom popover by now. And for the popover, we got 3 parts. Let's create this. The breaking change set, backdrop, arrow, and content. So we're gonna definitely try out all of them: backdrop, arrow, and content. And let's see what we can achieve with those. Once again, if possible, you could also use the CSS variables to style different parts. But in this case, I will just use the max height. This could be achieved by setting the content part to a specific height as well, I guess. Let's see. There we got the list. Now I can also show you this funny thing. I have a list of like 15 items, but I just can't scroll it. For some reason, there's something blocking the scroll event. And the only thing to change this is use scroll Y false. On the Ion content of the popover page. If I now check it out, I can suddenly scroll. There's also another fix using a CSS class. Pick the one you like, or maybe it's already fixed in the future, but this is a quick fix. Perhaps you learned something else today. Once again, we could also now change stuff like the backdrop opacity. If we inspect the element, we see, okay, we got the backdrop color. And we should have the Ion backdrop opacity at some point as well. So we can also type this. Thanks. Ion backdrop opacity. Let's change this to 0.6. Actually, it's not Ion. Only the colors are Ion, right? I think so. So now the background is a lot darker. Now let's change other things. We're gonna change the arrow. For that arrow, it was actually a bit harder to figure out what we had to style. So let's try to find this little arrow. Ion backdrop, Ion popover, my popover. Okay, I don't want to filter anymore. All right, finally found it inside the popover wrapper. There we got the popover arrow. We see the default styling, and at some place we got popover arrow after. That's the place where background color is defined and used. So since we don't want to set the background color for the whole custom popover, we will do it directly where we target that part. And we're going to set it just to red. So let's check it out. Hopefully this will only make the little arrow red. So we found once again the right slot. Let's change also for the content something. Let's just use something like font weight, I don't know, 600, just so we see a little result. Padding 50 pixels. Will we see this? Yeah, I guess we will notice it. Let's give it a try. And we see epic padding everywhere, and the font size, the font weight has changed as well. On top of that, we could now also change the backdrop. Let's just set it to a background color of blue. I feel like, yeah, it's going to work. And it's the same like we had before with the modal. We could also set the Ion backdrop color to blue. That would basically be the same like targeting the part. But that's it so far. We've now seen how to either use the available CSS variables. If they are available and the right ones, you can inject them into the shadow component. If they don't exist, you can also easily use the different parts. You just need to make sure that either you figure it out by looking at them, so you will see part content, part arrow, stuff like that in the HTML here, or better, of course, check out the documentation. For every Ionic component, there should be an entry which parts in that component are defined, and then you can easily target them, either if you're already in a rule using the @ sign, or like we've seen in the beginning, which would be something like Ion modal part content, just like this, if you want to just target it once or overall for all parts or for all Ionic modals in your application. Alright, and that's it for today's quick win. There was really a short episode, but I wanted to highlight this as I'm pretty sure a lot of people will run into this issue once Ionic version 6 is out. Perhaps it is already out by now, but I was recording the video up front, so I used a beta and I already recognized that people encountered this problem. As a recap, really easy: use CSS variables like you did before, or rewrite the CSS for modals and popovers to use and target the shadow parts of these components, content, backdrop, arrow. We've seen them, and perhaps we will see this in the future for other components as well. And then you can just transfer that knowledge to directly put the right styling in place for those new components. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button for more Ionic tutorials and videos coming in the future, and I will hopefully catch you next week inside the next video. So have a great week and happy coding, Simon.